Her stepbrother sold her to marry a billionaire CEO, but after one night, he became obsessed with her. Hi, my very sweet and beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. How are you, my very beautiful family? I hope you're all doing well and feeling loved. Let me start with a beautiful prayer for my most loyal and loving family. May the divine bless you with perfect health, strength, and protection. May your bodies be filled with vitality, your minds with peace, and your hearts with unwavering love. May you always find the strength to rise above any challenge, and may every step you take be guided by light and grace. May you be surrounded by those who care for you deeply, and may your life be filled with endless blessings, joy, and deep fulfillment. You are cherished, my beautiful family, and I pray that each of you finds the love, health, and peace you so truly deserve. Now, my beautiful family, tell me, what's the most beautiful dish from your country or city that you would recommend to me? I'm always looking for new flavors and new stories to share with you. And don't forget to like and comment if you like this video. Let's start with love, as always. Bree Lindsay stared at her reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall, tucking a stray curl back into her meticulously arranged updo. The black dress she wore, borrowed from her roommate, hugged her curves in a way that made her uncomfortable, the material foreign against her deep brown skin. She was used to worn jeans and psychology textbooks, not this glamorous facade her stepbrother Derek had insisted upon. "Stop fidgeting!" Derek hissed, his eyes darting nervously to the ascending floor numbers. "Remember what I told you. Smile, be charming, and don't ask questions." Bree shot him a glare that could have melted steel. "You still haven't told me why I need to meet this man. What kind of business proposition involves dressing me up like this?" The words had barely left her mouth when the elevator doors slid open to reveal a penthouse that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city below, the space dripping with understated luxury that made Bree instantly aware of every imperfection in her appearance. "Mr. Burton will be with you shortly," a sleek assistant informed them before disappearing down a hallway. "Derek," Bree whispered urgently, gripping her stepbrother's arm, "what have you gotten me into? Who is this man?" Derek's face had gone pale, sweat beading on his upper lip. "Matt Burton, CEO of Burton Enterprises, and the man who's going to solve all our problems." "What problems? I don't—" The words died in her throat as a man entered the room, tall, with broad shoulders tapering to narrow hips, his custom suit fitting him like a second skin. But it was his eyes that captured her, piercing blue, intense, looking at her with such focused attention that Bree felt naked despite her dress. "Mr. Burton," Derek stammered, stepping forward with an extended hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet us." Matt Burton ignored the offered hand, his gaze never leaving Bree. "This is her?" His voice was deep, rougher than she'd expected from someone so polished. "Yes, sir. My stepsister, Bree Lindsay, as we discussed." Bree's head snapped toward Derek. "As you discussed? Derek, what—" "Leave us," Matt commanded, still not acknowledging Derek's presence beyond those two words. "Sir, the money will be transferred once I've spoken with Miss Lindsay, alone." The panic rising in Bree's chest exploded as Derek nodded and backed toward the elevator. "Derek, don't you dare leave me here!" But the doors had already closed. Behind him, Bree turned slowly to face the man, who now stood closer, close enough that she caught the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. "What's happening?" she demanded, proud that her voice didn't shake despite the hammering of her heart. Matt walked to a bar cart, his movements fluid and controlled. "Your stepbrother owes very dangerous people a great deal of money. Gambling debts he can't pay. He poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. He came to me for help. And why would you help him?" Bree asked, not touching the offered drink. Matt's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I wouldn't." He took a sip of his drink. "But he offered something in exchange that interested me." The realization dawned slowly, horror spreading through her. veins like ice water. Me? He sold me to you? A crude way of putting it, but essentially correct. Matt's gaze traveled over her with such intensity that Bree could almost feel it, like a physical touch. He showed me your photo, told me about the brilliant psychology student working 2 jobs to pay tuition, and suggested a mutually beneficial arrangement. There's nothing mutual about this, Bree spat, backing away until she hit the window. I'm not for sale. Everyone has a price, Ms. Lindsay. Matt set down his glass and approached her with the silent grace of a predator. Your stepbrother certainly did. The question is, what's yours? I don't have one, she said, chin lifting defiantly. No? He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded paper, offering it to her. Not even for this. With trembling fingers, Bree opened it, a medical bill for her mother, one she'd been struggling to pay for months. At the bottom, stamped in red, final notice. How did you get this? I make it my business to know everything, Ms. Lindsay. His voice softened marginally. I also know your mother needs surgery she can't afford. Surgery I could arrange tomorrow. Tears pricked at Bree's eyes, but she blinked them away furiously. What exactly are you proposing? Become my fiancé, in public, at events, wherever I need you, for 1 year. His eyes held hers captive. In return, your stepbrother's debts vanish. Your mother receives the best medical care money can buy, and your tuition is covered through your doctorate. And in private? Bree asked, her voice barely audible. Something flashed in Matt's eyes. Something hungry that made her pulse jump. That's negotiable. Anger surged through her, hot and fierce. She grabbed the untouched drink from the side table and threw the contents directly in his face. I'm not a commodity. For a moment, Matt stood perfectly, still, alcohol dripping down his chiseled features. Then, to her shock, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his face and sent an unwelcome heat spiraling through her core. There she is, he murmured, sounding pleased. Derek said you were feisty, but I wanted to see it for myself. Before she could react, Matt closed the distance between them. His hand caught hers, and the instant their skin touched, an electric current seemed to arc between them. Bree gasped, trying to pull away, but Matt held firm, his thumb brushing over her palm in a way that sent shivers racing up her arm. Let go of me, she whispered, but the words lacked conviction. Matt leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. You're mine now, Bree Lindsay. The sooner you accept that, the better for everyone involved. Something primitive and unwelcome fluttered in her stomach at his words. With her free hand, Bree slapped him hard across the face, the crack of it echoing in the vast room. Matt didn't flinch. Instead, his eyes darkened with something that looked disturbingly like desire. He released her hand and stepped back, touching his reddened cheek with an almost admiring expression. I'll give you 24 hours to decide, he said, his voice husky. Though I think we both already know what your answer will be. You don't know anything about me, Bree retorted, hating the tremor in her voice. I know enough. Matt reached out, capturing a stray curl that had escaped her updo. He rubbed it between his fingers, his eyes never leaving hers. I know you'd sacrifice anything for the people you love. I know you're stronger than you look. And I know that despite your outrage, you felt it too when I touched you. Felt what? She challenged, though she already knew. Matt's smile was slow and confident. Chemistry, Ms. Lindsay, the kind that can't be manufactured or ignored. He tucked, the curl behind her ear, his fingertips grazing her skin. The kind that makes this arrangement far more interesting than a simple business transaction. Bree jerked away from his touch, but couldn't deny the trail of heat it left behind. I hate you, she whispered. You don't know me well enough to hate me. Matt walked to his desk, pressing a button. Yet, the elevator doors opened behind her. 24 hours Matt reminded her, already turning his attention to papers on his desk, dismissing her. I'll have a car waiting outside your apartment tomorrow night. Bring enough for a week. If you don't appear, I'll assume you've declined, and all offers of assistance will be withdrawn. Bree stepped into the elevator, her legs barely supporting her. As the doors began to close, Matt looked up one last time, his gaze burning into hers. And Bree, the chemistry between us, that's non-negotiable. The doors closed on his words, but Bree couldn't escape the truth in them. Despite everything, the manipulation, the outrageous proposition, the effective blackmail, her body had responded to his in a way that terrified her. And as the elevator descended, taking her back to her ordinary life for what might be the last time, Bree couldn't decide which was worse: being sold to Matt Burton, or the traitorous part of her that wasn't entirely horrified by the prospect. Chapter 2. Prisoner of Passion. Bree stood in the center of Matt Burton's penthouse, surrounded by her hastily packed suitcases, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Outside, lightning flashed across the night sky, illuminating the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the cityscape below. She hadn't wanted to come, had spent 23 of her allotted 24 hours determined to refuse. But then her mother's doctor had called with news of a miraculous opening for the surgery, all expenses mysteriously covered. The timing left no doubt in Bree's mind who was responsible. I see you made the sensible choice, Matt's voice came. From behind her, deep and smooth as velvet, Bree turned slowly, steeling herself against the involuntary flutter in her stomach at the sight of him. He'd dispensed with his suit jacket and tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone, to reveal the strong column of his throat. His sleeves were rolled up, exposing muscular forearms dusted with dark hair. I didn't have a choice, she replied coldly. You made sure of that. Matt approached with the confident gait of a man accustomed to getting his way. There's always a choice, Bree. You chose your mother's health over your pride. His eyes softened slightly. It's one of the things I admire about you. Don't pretend. You know me, she snapped. Or that this is anything but what it is, glorified ownership. Is that what you think this is? He stood close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne mingling with something darker, more primal. What else would you call it? Bree lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated, despite the way his proximity made her pulse race. You purchased me from my stepbrother, like a commodity. Matt's jaw tightened. I offered you a solution to problems that weren't of my making, your stepbrother's debts, your mother's medical bills. His gaze was unwavering. I'm not the villain here, Bree. Then what are you? She challenged. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder that shook the windows. Bree flinched violently, a small, involuntary sound escaping her throat. Something in Matt's expression shifted. You're afraid of storms. I'm not afraid of anything, Bree lied, wrapping her arms around herself as another thunderclap boomed overhead. Matt said nothing, but she felt his eyes studying her with that unnerving intensity. I'll show you to your room, he said finally, reaching for one of her suitcases. I can manage, Bree insisted, but he had already lifted the heaviest bag with ease. She followed him down a hallway lined with abstract art pieces that probably cost more than her entire education. The room he led her to was spacious and elegantly appointed, with a king-sized bed covered in crisp white linens. My room is at the end of the hall, Matt informed her, setting down her suitcase. You'll find everything you need in the bathroom. If there's anything else, just ask. How long am I expected to stay here? Bree asked, trying to keep her voice steady as another flash of lightning illuminated the room. Until I'm convinced our arrangement will work. Matt's eyes traveled over her in a way that made heat bloom across her skin. Consider it a trial period. And what exactly does this arrangement entail? She hated how breathless she sounded. Matt moved closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. In public, you'll accompany me to events as my fiancé. You'll be charming, attentive, and convincing. And in private, Bree forced herself to meet his gaze, despite the intensity she found there. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. In private, we'll see where this goes. His voice had dropped to a lower register that seemed to vibrate through her. I think we both know there's something between us worth exploring. There's nothing between us except your money and my desperation, Bree retorted, though her body betrayed her with a shiver that had nothing to do with fear. Matt smiled, a slow curve of his lips that transformed his face from merely handsome to devastating. We'll see. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. Dinner will be ready in an hour. I expect you to join me. With that, he was gone, leaving Bree alone with the storm raging outside and the confused emotions storming within her. The thunder grew more intense as the evening progressed. Bree managed to make it through dinner with stilted conversation, focusing on her plate rather than the man across from her who watched her with undisguised interest. She excused herself as soon as possible, retreating to her room. But sleep proved impossible as the storm reached its peak. Each thunderclap seemed louder than the last, making her flinch and curl tighter under the unfamiliar covers. When a particularly violent boom shook the building, Bree abandoned her bed entirely, seeking the small comfort of the walk-in closet where the sound was at least somewhat muffled. She huddled in the corner, wrapped in a blanket, trying to control. Her breathing as childhood memories of another storm, another night, threatened to overwhelm her. That's where Matt found her an hour later. Bree? His voice came softly through the darkness. Are you in here? She remained silent, hoping he would leave, but another crash of thunder betrayed her with an involuntary whimper. The closet light clicked on, revealing Matt standing in the doorway, concern etched across his features. He wore only pajama bottoms, his chest bare and sculpted in a way that would have captured her full attention under any other circumstances. Go away, she managed, hating her weakness, hating that he was witnessing it. Instead, Matt crouched before her, his expression gentler than she'd seen it. It's just a storm, Bree. It can't hurt you. I know that, she snapped, embarrassment fueling her anger. I have a phobia, not a lack of intelligence. To her surprise, Matt's lips curved in a small smile. Even in fear, you're fierce. He reached out slowly as if approaching a wounded animal. Come here. No. The word came out less forcefully than she intended. Thunder boomed again, and Bree closed her eyes, trembling. She felt movement, then warmth as Matt settled beside her in the closet, his back against the wall, shoulder to shoulder with her. When I was a boy, he said quietly, I was afraid of the dark. Not normal childhood fear, paralyzing terror. My father called it weakness. His voice had taken on a distant quality. He would lock me in the basement to cure me. Bree opened her eyes, turning to look at him. In the soft light, with his guard momentarily lowered, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. Did it work? She asked softly. Matt's laugh held no humor. I learned to hide my fear, which isn't the same as overcoming it. His eyes found hers. We all have demons, Bree. Some are just better hidden than others. Another thunderclap shook the closet, but this time, when Bree flinched, Matt's arm slipped around her shoulders, drawing her against the solid warmth of his chest. She should have pulled away, maintained the distance between captor and captive. Instead, she found herself leaning into him, her face pressed against his skin that smelled of cedar and something uniquely him. I was 8, she whispered against his chest, trapped in a car during a tornado. My father, the man who raised me. She swallowed hard. He didn't make it. The sounds of the storm still bring it all back. Matt's arm tightened around her, his other hand coming up to stroke her hair. I'm sorry. They sat in silence as the storm continued, but now, with each thunderclap, Matt's hand would gently squeeze her shoulder, a silent reminder of his presence. Gradually, Bree felt her tension ease, the terror subsiding to mere discomfort. "Better?" he asked after a while, his breath stirring her hair. Bree nodded, suddenly acutely aware of their position. Her pressed against his naked chest, his arms around her, the intimacy of shared confidences between them. She pulled back slightly to look at him, words of thanks on her lips. The words died as their eyes met. Matt's had darkened, the blue almost consumed by dilated pupils, and his breathing had changed, grown deeper. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the perfect planes of his face, the strong line of his jaw now tense with restraint. "Bree," he whispered, her name both a warning and a question. She should have moved away, should have remembered who he was, what this was. Instead, Bree found herself lifting a hand to his face, her fingers tracing the stubble along his jaw with fascination. Matt remained perfectly still, his eyes never leaving hers, but she could feel the thundering of his heart matching her own. When her fingers reached his lips, he caught her wrist gently, his thumb pressing against her racing pulse. "Be very sure," he murmured against her fingertips, "because if you start this, I don't know if I can stop." The warning should have frightened her. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in her belly, a need she'd never experienced before rising to the surface. Outside, the storm raged on, but the storm brewing between them had become infinitely more dangerous. Slowly, deliberately, Bree leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. For one heartbeat, Matt remained still. Then, with a sound somewhere between a groan and a growl, he took control of the kiss, one hand tangling in her hair to angle her head, the other pulling her firmly against him. His lips were soft but demanding, coaxing hers apart with a skill that left her breathless. The first touch of his tongue against hers sent a jolt of electricity through Bree's body that made the lightning outside pale in comparison. She gasped into his mouth, her hands finding purchase on his shoulders, the heat of his skin burning her palms. Matt kissed like a man starved, with an intensity that suggested he'd been thinking about this moment since he first saw her. His hand slid from her hair down her spine, pressing her closer until she was practically in his lap, the thin material of her nightgown doing nothing to disguise her body's response to him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Matt rested, his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if in pain. "This complicates things," he said roughly. "This changes nothing," Bree countered, even as her body hummed with awareness of him. "I'm still here because I have to be." Matt opened his eyes, and the naked want she saw there made her shiver. "Are you sure about that? Because what just happened didn't feel like obligation to me." Bree pulled away, wrapping the blanket tighter around herself, using it as a shield. "Chemistry isn't consent, Mr. Burton." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Back to formalities already?" "This isn't a romance," Bree reminded herself. "It's a transaction." Matt stood in one fluid motion, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Is that what you need to tell yourself?" He moved toward the closet door. "The storm is passing. You should be able to sleep now." He paused at the threshold, looking back at her with eyes that seemed to see too much. "But Bree, transactions don't burn like that." After he left, Bree remained in the closet, fingers pressed to lips that still tingled from his kiss, trying to ignore the voice that whispered he was right. Because, admitting the truth, that she was dangerously attracted to the man who had essentially purchased her, was far more terrifying than any storm could ever be. Chapter 3. Flame and Ice. 3 days after the storm, Bree and Matt had settled into an uneasy dance of avoidance and tension. Neither mentioned the kiss, yet it hung between them like an unspoken promise or threat. Bree threw herself into her studies, grateful that Matt had arranged for her coursework to be sent to the penthouse. She spent most of her time in the guest room or the study, avoiding the man who had turned her life upside down. Matt respected her space, but watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle whenever they shared a room. He was unfailingly polite, maddeningly controlled, and it infuriated her how easily he seemed to have dismissed what had happened between them. On the fourth evening, Matt informed her they would be attending a charity gala the following night. Their first public appearance as a couple, Bree had nodded stiffly, accepting the garment bag he presented her with without comment. Now, standing before the mirror in her room, Bree hardly recognized herself. The dress Matt had chosen was a deep burgundy that complemented her dark skin perfectly, the silk clinging to every curve before flowing to the floor in a liquid cascade. Her hair was swept up in an elegant style by the stylist Matt had arranged, showing off the graceful line of her neck and the diamond earrings that had appeared mysteriously on her dresser that morning. A soft knock at her door broke her reverie. Bree opened it to find Matt standing there, devastatingly handsome, in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air between them thickening with unacknowledged desire. "You're beautiful," Matt said finally, his voice deeper than usual. "Thank you," Bree replied, hating the breathlessness in her tone. "Should we go?" Matt offered his arm, and with only slight hesitation, Bree placed her hand in the crook of his elbow. The contact, even through layers of clothing, sent a jolt of awareness through her that she desperately tried to ignore. The ride to the gala was silent, tension filling the limousine's interior. When they arrived, Matt leaned close to murmur. In her ear, "Remember tonight you're madly in love with me." Bree looked at him coolly. "I'm an excellent actress." His lips curved in a knowing smile. "We'll see." The moment they entered the grand ballroom, Bree understood why Matt needed a convincing fiancé. All eyes turned to them, curious and assessing. Matt's hand settled possessively at the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd, introducing her to business associates and socialites whose names blurred together. She played her part perfectly, smiling, laughing at the right moments, gazing at Matt with fabricated adoration. If her heart occasionally raced when his thumb stroked small circles against her bare back, she attributed it to the champagne. "Dance with me," Matt said after an hour, not a request but a command. Bree allowed him to lead her to the dance floor, where he pulled her against him, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. They moved together with surprising harmony, as if their bodies already knew each other. "You're quite the performer," Matt murmured, his lips close to her ear. "I almost believe you don't despise me." "I don't despise you," Bree admitted reluctantly. "I despise the situation." His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "The situation where I'm paying for your mother's medical care? Where I've arranged for you to continue your education without financial stress?" Bree's eyes flashed up to his. "The situation where my choices were taken from me." "Were they?" Matt pulled her incrementally closer. "You chose to come to me under duress, and yet—" His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. "You chose to kiss me during the storm. No duress there." Heat flooded Bree's face. A moment of weakness. Was it? His voice had dropped to a whisper. "Because I think about that kiss every minute of every day. I think about what would have happened if you hadn't pulled away." The naked hunger in his eyes made Bree's breath catch. Before she could respond, a waiter bumped into them, sloshing champagne onto the bodice of her dress. "I'm so sorry, miss," the flustered young man exclaimed. Matt's expression hardened. "Get my fiancé a towel, now." Bree instinctively tensed at the sharp tone. The thunder had been distant all evening, but the sudden confrontation made her anxious, memories of her storm phobia surfacing briefly. "It's fine," Bree interjected, pressing her own cocktail napkin to the stain. "Really, it was an accident." The waiter scurried away under Matt's glare. Bree shook her head. You didn't have to terrify him. He ruined your dress. It's just a dress, she countered, continuing to dab at the dampness. And it's not my dress, it's yours, like everything else I'm wearing. Something flashed in Matt's eyes. Without a word, he took her elbow and guided her firmly from the dance floor, through a side door and into a dim corridor. What are you doing? Bree demanded, as he led her through another door into what appeared to be a private art gallery, filled with sculptures and paintings. Getting you away from the crowd, Matt replied, closing the door behind them. In the ambient lighting, his face was half in shadow, making him look dangerous, unpredictable. I need to clean my dress, Bree said, suddenly aware of how alone they were. Matt approached slowly, like a predator stalking prey. You think I care about the dress? You seemed to care when that waiter spilled. I cared that he touched you, Matt interrupted, his voice rough with an emotion Bree hadn't heard from him before. I don't like anyone touching what's mine. Anger flared in Bree's chest. I am not yours. Aren't you? He was directly in front of her now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. For the next year, in every way that matters, you belong to me. My body is not part of our arrangement, Bree insisted, even as her treacherous pulse quickened. Matt's laugh was low and knowing, and your body responds to me whether you want it to or not. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing over her lower lip. Just like mine does to you. Bree tried to step back, but found herself against a wall. This is inappropriate. Is it? Matt leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me you haven't thought about that kiss every night since it happened. Tell me you don't lie awake wondering what it would be like if I touched you, really touched you. I haven't, she lied breathlessly. Matt's smile was knowing. Your pulse says otherwise. His thumb moved to the frantic beat at her throat. You're a terrible liar, Bree Lindsay. And you're a controlling bastard, she shot back. His eyes darkened. Yes, I am. And then his mouth was on hers. Unlike their first kiss, which had begun tentatively, this was pure possession from the start. Matt's lips claimed hers with a hunger that matched the days of tension between them. His hands tangled in her hair, uncaring that he was destroying the elegant updo, pulling her head back to deepen the kiss. Bree knew she should push him away, maintain the boundaries she'd been so determined to set. Instead, her body betrayed, her completely arms winding around his neck, pressing herself against the hard planes of his chest. A small moan escaped her as his tongue swept into her mouth, tasting of champagne and desire. Matt backed her more firmly against the wall, one hand moving to her hip, then lower, gathering the silk of her dress to slip beneath it. When his fingers found bare skin above her thigh-high stockings, they both groaned. Tell me to stop, he murmured against her lips, even as his hand inched higher. Tell me you don't want this. Bree couldn't lie, not with her body responding so eagerly to his touch. Instead, she pulled his mouth back to hers, nipping at his lower lip in a way that made him growl low in his throat. The sound of voices in the corridor outside broke through their haze of desire. They froze, Matt's hand still beneath her dress. Bree's fingers tangled in his hair. For a moment they simply stared at each other, both breathing heavily. The voices passed. Matt slowly withdrew his hand, but didn't step away, keeping Bree caged between his body and the wall. This isn't how I wanted it to happen, he said, his voice rough. Not like this, not here. Bree's laugh was shaky. You planned how it would happen? I've planned every detail, Matt admitted, his eyes never leaving hers. From the moment I first saw your photograph, I knew you would be in my bed. The raw honesty of the statement should have repulsed her. Instead, Bree felt a forbidden thrill at being so desired. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of the chemistry between us. Matt's hand came up to stroke her cheek with surprising tenderness. From the moment we met, this was inevitable. Bree shook her head, trying to clear it of the fog of desire. Sex isn't inevitable, Matt. It's a choice. Then choose me, he said simply. Not because of our arrangement, not because you have to. Choose what's happening between us. The vulnerability in his eyes surprised her. For a moment she glimpsed something beneath the controlled, commanding exterior, something that looked almost like need. "We should get back to the gala," Bree said, straightening her dress with trembling hands. "People will wonder where you've taken your fiancé." Matt caught her wrist gently. "This isn't over, Bree." She met his gaze steadily. "I know." They re-entered the ballroom separately, Bree first after a hasty repair of her hair in a restroom, Matt following minutes later. They resumed their roles, the loving couple, the perfect match. But something fundamental had shifted between them as they rode home in the limousine, the air thick with unspoken desire. Bree wondered how long she could maintain this precarious balance between resistance and surrender. When Matt's hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining with hers, she didn't pull away. At the penthouse, they rode the elevator in charged silence. When the doors opened, Matt stepped aside to let her exit first. Bree paused at the entrance to the hallway that led to their separate bedrooms. "Good night, Matt," she said softly. The look he gave her was filled with such raw hunger that it nearly buckled her knees. "For now," he replied, the simple words a promise and a warning. Bree retreated to her room, closing the door behind her and leaning against it, her heart pounding. She could still taste him on her lips, feel the imprint of his hands on her body. The line she had been so determined not to cross was blurring more with each passing day. What terrified her most wasn't Matt's desire, but her own, the growing, undeniable need to surrender not just her body, but perhaps her heart, to the man who had bought her freedom with golden chains. Chapter 4. Shattered Control. The week following the gala passed in exquisite tension. Bree and Matt orbited each other like planets locked in gravitational pull, always aware, never colliding. Evenings were spent in carefully orchestrated proximity, dinners where their fingers occasionally brushed, movie nights that somehow ended with Bree's feet in Matt's lap. Each night, he walked her to her bedroom door. Each night, he merely brushed his lips against her forehead and whispered, "When you're ready." Tonight, Bree sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by textbooks, when Matt knocked and entered. He'd clearly just returned home, top buttons of his shirt undone. "You missed dinner," he said, noticing the untouched sandwich on her nightstand. "I lost track of time," she admitted sheepishly. Matt sat on the edge of her bed, picking up a textbook. Psychological Theories of Attachment, heavy bedtime reading. It explores how early relationships shape our ability to form connections later in life. Matt's eyes met hers. "And what does it say about people who didn't have those early connections?" "That they often struggle with intimacy," she said carefully. "They develop defenses, control, perfectionism, emotional distance." "Sounds familiar," Matt murmured. "It also says those patterns can be changed with the right person." Matt stood abruptly. "You should eat something." "Matt," Bree called as he reached the door, "what was your childhood like?" Without turning, he said quietly, "Non-existent." Bree approached him slowly. "Tell me." "My mother left when I was 4. My father was absent, even when present. Boarding schools from age 6. Holidays spent with housekeepers." The self-mockery in his tone couldn't disguise the hurt beneath. "There's nothing classic about being alone when you're a child." Matt caught her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Is this research for your paper, Dr. Lindsay?" "No. This is me trying to understand you." "Why bother?" "In less than a year, our arrangement ends." The thought created an unexpected hollowness in Bree's chest. "Maybe I want to know the man behind the arrangement." "Be careful what you wish for," he murmured, bringing her hand to his lips. I'm selfish enough to keep you even knowing I'm not what you deserve. Get some rest, he said, releasing her hand. We have plans tomorrow. The next morning found them in Matt's sports car, speeding away from the city toward a stunning glass and wood retreat built into a mountainside overlooking a pristine lake. What is this place? Bree asked, awestruck. My sanctuary, Matt replied simply. No one comes here except me. They spent the morning hiking, Matt pointing out wildlife with surprising knowledge. By the time they reached a waterfall cascading into a crystal pool, they were talking with an ease that felt remarkably like friendship. It's beautiful, Bree said, approaching the edge. Careful, Matt cautioned. The rocks can be slippery. Her foot slipped on moss-covered stone. She felt herself falling, arms windmilling, then strong arms caught her, pulling her against a solid chest. I've got you, Matt murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Bree turned in his arms, finding his face inches from hers, concern quickly shifting to something more primal as their gazes locked. Bree, he whispered. Her name a question, she answered, by pressing her lips to his, in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something far more demanding. Matt's hands moved to her hips, pulling her closer as his tongue sought entrance she eagerly granted. When they finally broke apart, Matt rested his forehead against hers. We should head back. By twilight, they'd return to the house. After dinner, they settled before the fire, wine glasses in hand. Why are you doing this? Bree asked suddenly. Matt raised an eyebrow. Making you dinner? All of it. Being kind. Did you think I wouldn't be? I thought this was a business arrangement. With benefits, maybe, not this. What is this, exactly? It feels like you're courting me, which doesn't make sense when you already have me. Matt set down his glass. I don't have you, Bree. Not in any way that matters. I have your presence, your compliance, but I don't have your trust or affection. His eyes held hers. I want you to choose me, not just tolerate me. Why me? You could have anyone. Matt reached out, tucking a curl behind her ear. Because from the moment I saw you, standing in my penthouse with fire in your eyes, I knew no one else would ever challenge me the way you do. See through me the way you do. You're not who I thought you were. No, you're more dangerous. Because I'm starting to care about you. Matt's eyes darkened as he leaned forward, capturing her lips in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something far more demanding. Bree met his passion with her own, hands finding their way under his shirt to explore the taut muscles of his back. Bree, he breathed against her lips. If you want to stop, I don't, she interrupted. I don't want to stop. Matt studied her face, searching for hesitation. Finding none, he lifted her, Bree's legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her toward the master bedroom. He laid her on the massive bed with surprising gentleness, looking down at her with desire and something deeper, more profound. Are you sure? He asked one final time. In answer, Bree pulled him down to her. As clothing was discarded and bare skin met bare skin, she discovered a new side of Matt, tender, attentive, focused entirely on her pleasure before his own. Later, cradled against his chest, Bree traced the faint scars that marked his torso. A motorcycle accident when I was 20, he explained. My rebellion against my father's control. You're still rebelling, aren't you? This us, it's not what your father would have arranged for you. My father arranged a marriage for me, once before, to the daughter of his business partner. I refused. It was the final break between us. Is this arrangement your way of proving something too? Matt's hand came up to cup her face. This started as something else entirely. But now, I find myself terrified of the day our contract ends. I'm afraid, she whispered. Of what? Of forgetting why I'm here. Of believing this is something it isn't. And what do you think this is? A fantasy with an expiration date. After a long silence, Matt whispered, "What if it doesn't have to end?" As she drifted to sleep in his arms, Bree wondered if it was already too late, if she had already surrendered not just her body, but her heart to the man who had purchased her freedom. Regardless of how their story had begun. Chapter 5. Rivals and Revelations. The month following their weekend at the mountain retreat transformed Bree's captivity into something dangerously close to happiness. Matt had become a different man, still commanding in business, but tender. In private, seeking her opinion on matters both trivial and important. Nights were spent in passionate exploration, days in comfortable companionship whenever his schedule allowed. Bree continued her studies remotely, while Matt had surprised her by converting a spare room into a personal study space, complete with everything she might need. Her mother's health improved steadily, and during their weekly video calls, Bree found it increasingly difficult to maintain the fiction that her relationship with Matt was merely an arrangement. Tonight, they were attending a fundraising gala at the city's most prestigious art museum. Bree stood in their bedroom, for she now slept exclusively in Matt's suite, adjusting the emerald earrings that matched her gown. "Stunning," Matt said from the doorway, his eyes darkening as they traveled over her form. He crossed to her, hands settling on her hips as he pressed a kiss to the sensitive spot beneath her ear. "Perhaps we should skip the gala," Bree laughed, turning in his arms. "You're the guest of honor. I don't think that's an option." "Being obscenely wealthy should count for something," he grumbled good-naturedly, capturing her lips in a kiss that threatened to undo all her careful preparation. With reluctance, they eventually made their way to the gala. The museum had been transformed into a glittering wonderland, with champagne flowing freely and the city's elite mingling among priceless artworks. Bree had grown accustomed to these events, no longer intimidated by the wealth and power that surrounded Matt like a natural element. "I need to speak with some board members," Matt murmured, his hand warm at the small of her back. "Will you be all right on your own for a few minutes?" "I think I can manage to admire some art without supervision," Bree replied with a teasing smile. Matt's lips brushed her temple. "Don't charm anyone too thoroughly while I'm gone." As he disappeared into the crowd, Bree wandered toward a room featuring contemporary African-American artists, losing herself in the powerful imagery. She was studying a particularly moving piece when a voice spoke from beside her. "Extraordinary, isn't it? The artist captures such raw emotion." Bree turned to find a striking woman in her early 30s, elegantly dressed in a form-fitting red gown, studying her with curious intensity. "Yes," Bree agreed. "I was just thinking the same thing." "Camilla Winters," the woman said, extending a manicured hand. "And you must be Bree Lindsay, Matt Burton's fiancée." The slight pause before the last word was deliberate, putting Bree instantly on guard. "That's right." Camilla's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How interesting. Matt has always been so particular about his companions. I'm sorry. How do you know Matt?" Bree asked, keeping her tone neutral. "Oh, we go back years." Camilla sipped her champagne. "We were quite close once, before his collecting phase began." "Collecting phase?" Camilla studied her over the rim of her glass. "Didn't he tell you about the others?" A cold weight settled in Bree's stomach. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." Camilla laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, you poor thing. You actually believe you're special to him." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Matt has a pattern, darling. He finds beautiful, innocent women from humble backgrounds, becomes obsessed, showers them with gifts and attention, makes them fall in love with him. And then, when he grows bored," she snapped her fingers, "on to the next conquest." Bree took an involuntary step back. "You don't know what you're talking about, don't I?" Camilla arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Ask him about Sophia." or Teresa, or any of the others who thought they were the one. Her eyes held false sympathy. You're just the latest in a long line, honey. A beautiful new toy he'll eventually tire of. Is there a problem here? Matt's voice cut through the tension as he appeared at Bree's side, his hand possessively circling her waist. Matt, Camilla Winters purred, leaning in to kiss his cheek. I was just getting acquainted with your lovely new acquisition. Something dangerous flashed in Matt's eyes. Camilla, I wasn't aware you were invited. The museum board values my family's contributions, she replied smoothly. Almost as much as yours. Matt's jaw tightened. If you'll excuse us, I need to borrow my fiancée. Without waiting for a response, he guided Bree away, his body radiating tension. Once they were a safe distance across the room, Bree pulled away. From his grasp. Who is she? She demanded quietly. Matt's expression was carefully controlled. Someone from my past who clearly hasn't moved on. She said you collect women, that I'm just the latest in a pattern. His face hardened. And you believed. Her? I don't know what to believe, Bree admitted, searching his face. I know almost nothing about your past relationships. Matt ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. This isn't the place for this conversation. Then let's leave, she challenged. For a moment she thought he might refuse. Then he nodded curtly and led her toward the exit, pausing only briefly to make apologies to the event coordinator. The ride home was silent, tension filling the car like a physical presence. When they reached the penthouse, Matt immediately poured himself a whiskey, knocking it back before turning to face her. Ask what you want to know, he said flatly. Bree stood her ground. Is what she said true? Do you have a pattern of becoming obsessed with women only to discard them when you're bored? Something flashed in Matt's eyes, not anger, but something closer to pain. My past relationships are more complicated than Camilla's spiteful version. That's not an answer. Matt set down his glass with controlled precision. Yes, I've had relationships that followed a certain pattern. I become intensely focused on a woman who interests me. The relationship burns hot and fast, and then it ends. The confirmation hit Bree like a physical blow. And how exactly is what we have any different? Because I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. The words exploded from him with unexpected force. Because I've never brought anyone to my mountain house, or introduced them to my business partners, or found myself rearranging my entire life just to see them smile. I've never shared my fears with anyone before, never let anyone see me vulnerable during a storm, never felt this complete with another person. His outburst left them both stunned. Matt turned away, hands braced on the bar counter, shoulders tight with tension. You want the truth? He continued, voice lower now. Yes, I saw your photo and became fixated. Yes, I arranged with your stepbrother to bring you into my life. And yes, I've done similar things before. He turned to face her, his expression raw with an emotion Bree had never seen from him. But I've never ever felt this level of obsession. It terrifies me, Bree, what you do to me, how much power you have over me. The naked vulnerability in his confession caught her off guard. If I have such power, why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning? Would you have given me a chance if I had? He countered. If I'd approached you and said, I saw your picture once and haven't been able to stop thinking about you, you would have run in the opposite direction, and rightfully so. He wasn't wrong, and they both knew it. Bree sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. So what happens when your obsession with me fades, when you get bored? Matt crossed to her, kneeling before her, taking her hands in his. That's what you don't understand. This isn't like before. I'm not just obsessed with having you, I'm obsessed with knowing you, with making you happy, with being worthy of you. His grip tightened. The others, they were distractions, attempts to fill a void I didn't understand. His voice faltered. You are the void, the missing piece I've been searching for without knowing it. Bree searched his face, looking for any sign of manipulation or deception. Instead, she found only raw honesty and something that looked terrifyingly like love. I don't know if I can trust this, she whispered. If I can trust you. Pain flashed across his features. I understand. He released her hands and stood. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. As he turned to leave, Bree caught his wrist. I didn't say I wanted you to go. Matt looked down at her, confusion evident in his eyes. I'm angry, she continued, and hurt, and I have 1,000 questions, but... She took a deep breath. But I also know what I feel when I'm with you, and I can't just turn that off, even if I should. Relief flooded his expression. Slowly, he sank back down beside her. Ask me anything. Everything, no more secrets. For hours, they talked. Truly talked. Matt revealing pieces of himself he'd kept hidden from everyone. His emotionally abusive father, his mother's abandonment, the soul-crushing loneliness of his childhood. How he'd learned to use control as a shield against vulnerability, to pursue women he knew wouldn't touch his heart, until Bree. I saw your photo in a university publication, he admitted. You were being honored for your research with underprivileged children, something about your eyes. He shook his head. I couldn't look away. I had my assistant find out everything about you. When I learned about your stepbrother's gambling problem, I saw an opportunity. You manipulated my life, Bree said softly. Yes, Matt met her gaze unflinchingly. And I would do it again, because it led you to me, but I never anticipated. He swallowed hard. I never expected to fall in love with you. The words hung between them, spoken for the first time. Bree's heart hammered against her ribs. You love me? She whispered. Matt reached for her hand, bringing it to his lips. Beyond reason, beyond sanity. I love your brilliance, your compassion, your defiance. I love how you challenge me, how you see through me. His eyes held hers. I love you, Bree. Lindsay, and it terrifies me. Instead of responding with words, Bree leaned forward and claimed his lips with hers. The kiss was different from their others, not driven by passion or desire, but by a deeper need for connection, for understanding. When they broke apart, Bree rested her forehead against his. I'm still angry, she murmured. I know. And I still have questions. Ask them all. She pulled back to look into his eyes. And I'm not ready to say it back. Not yet. Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. I understand. Bree took his face between her hands. But I'm not walking away. Because whatever this is between us, whatever it started as, it's real now. At least for me. For me, too, Matt whispered, vulnerability naked in his eyes. More real than anything I've ever known. That night, they made love with a new awareness, each touch a question and answer, each kiss a promise and plea. And as Bree fell asleep in Matt's arms, she realized a fundamental truth. The arrangement that had begun as her captivity had somehow, against all odds, become her choice. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that the revelation at the gala was only the first crack in the foundation of their newfound trust, and that the greatest test of their fragile love was yet to come. Chapter 6. Beautiful Surrender. 2 weeks after the gala, Bree stood on the tarmac beside Matt, staring at the sleek private jet with its engines already humming in preparation for departure. You still haven't told me where we're going, she said, the wind whipping her curls around her face. Matt's smile was enigmatic as he guided her up the steps. Patience has never been your strong suit. Inside, the jet was a study in luxury, cream leather seats, polished wood, and a flight attendant who greeted them with champagne. Bree sank into a seat, still marveling at this world Matt inhabited so naturally, a world that still felt foreign to her despite the months in his life. "At least give me a hint," she pressed as Matt settled beside her, taking her hand in his. His fingers traced idle patterns on her palm. "Somewhere I've never taken anyone else," he said quietly. "Somewhere I want to share only with you." The simple statement held more meaning than an elaborate declaration might have. Since their confrontation after the gala, Matt had been different, more open, more vulnerable, as if having confessed his feelings had broken some final barrier between them. "Sleep," he murmured as the jet gained altitude, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It's a long flight." When Bree awoke hours later, the view from the window had transformed from clouds to an expanse of crystal blue water stretching to the horizon. "Where are we?" she asked, voice still husky with sleep. "Almost there," Matt replied, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him, his usual crisp suit replaced by linen pants and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up. 20 minutes later, the jet began its descent toward a small island ringed with white beaches and lush greenery. As they touched down on a private airstrip, Bree caught sight of a sprawling structure nestled among palm trees on a hillside overlooking the ocean. "Welcome to Isla Azul," Matt said, helping her down the steps onto the sun-warmed tarmac. "My private island." Bree looked at him in disbelief. "You own an entire island." His smile was almost shy. "It was my first major purchase after my company took off. A place where no one could find me, where I didn't have to be Matt Burton, CEO, for anyone." A sleek jeep waited to transport them up winding roads to the house, though house, hardly. Described the architectural marvel of glass, stone, and wood that seemed to grow organically from the hillside, offering panoramic views of the ocean from every angle. "This is incredible," Bree breathed as Matt led her through open-concept living spaces where the distinction between indoors and outdoors blurred seamlessly. "The staff has been instructed to remain invisible unless needed," Matt explained, guiding her onto a sprawling deck that featured an infinity pool appearing to spill directly into the sea below. "It's just us." The significance of this, Matt Burton, who controlled every aspect of his environment, choosing total privacy with her, wasn't lost on Bree. That evening, they dined on the beach, a small table set with candles that flickered in the gentle breeze. Matt had arranged everything himself, she realized, watching him pour wine with careful concentration. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, as the sky transformed into a canvas of pinks and purples. Matt set down his glass, his expression unusually hesitant. "Because I wanted you to see me. Not the man I show the world, but who I am when all that falls away." His eyes met hers. "And because I've never wanted to share this place with anyone before you." The honesty in his voice touched something deep within her. Bree reached across the table, taking his hand. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Later, they walked along. The shoreline, waves lapping at their bare feet, the emerging stars reflected in the calm water. Matt had been telling her stories from his childhood, not the polished anecdotes he shared at business functions, but raw, honest memories of a boy desperate for connection. "After my mother left," he said, staring out at the horizon, "I used to imagine she'd found an island like this, somewhere peaceful, where she was happy. It made it easier somehow, thinking she'd left for something better rather than just to escape my father. And me? She didn't leave to escape you," Bree said softly. Matt's smile held no humor. "Rationally, I know that. The abandoned child in me still wonders what I could have done differently." Without thinking, Bree stopped walking and pulled him to her, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his. Matt responded immediately, his arms encircling her waist, lifting her slightly off the sand as the kiss deepened into something hungry and healing all at once. "What was that for?" he murmured against her mouth when they finally broke apart. For the boy who thought he wasn't enough, she replied, cupping his face in her hands. He deserved better. Something raw flickered in Matt's eyes. Without warning, he swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the water. "Matt!" she squealed, arms tightening around his neck. "What are you doing?" "Baptism," he replied cryptically, wading into the warm sea until the water reached his waist, still holding her above the surface. "Washing away the past." Before she could respond, he lowered her into the water, both of them still fully clothed. Bree gasped at the sensation, but found herself laughing as Matt followed her down, their bodies floating together under a canopy of stars. "You're crazy," she said, arms twining around his neck. "About you?" "Absolutely." The playfulness in his voice was new, a side of him she'd glimpsed only rarely. They floated together, the gentle current rocking them, clothes clinging to their bodies. Matt's hands found her waist beneath the water, drawing her closer until their faces were inches apart. "I want to show you something," he whispered. Taking her hand, he led her swimming parallel to the shore, around a small outcropping of rocks to a hidden cove. As they entered the secluded beach, Bree gasped in wonder. The sand here glowed with bioluminescence, each footstep creating bursts of blue light, while the water around them shimmered with the same ethereal glow. "It only happens during certain moon phases," Matt explained, his face illuminated by the natural phenomenon, like the ocean itself is full of stars. Bree stood transfixed, watching blue light ripple around their bodies with each small movement. When she looked up at Matt, she found him watching her with an expression of such tender reverence that it stole her breath. "I love you," he said simply, the words hanging between them like the most natural truth in the world. And for the first time, instead of fear or hesitation, Bree felt only certainty as she replied, "I love you too." The confession, finally spoken, seemed to unlock something primal in Matt. He pulled her to him with sudden urgency, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that spoke of possession and surrender simultaneously. Bree responded with equal fervor, hands sliding beneath his wet shirt to explore the taut muscle beneath. With the bioluminescent water lapping at their thighs, they shed their sodden clothing piece by piece, each new expanse of exposed skin met with reverent touches and heated kisses. When they were both naked under the stars, Matt lifted her again, Bree's legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her deeper into the glowing water. "I've dreamed of this," he confessed against her throat. "Making love to you here, where nothing exists but us." Their bodies joined with a synchronicity that still amazed Bree. How perfectly they fit together, how instinctively they moved as one. With each undulation of their bodies, the water around them came alive with blue light, as if the ocean itself was celebrating their union. Matt's eyes never left hers, holding her gaze with an intensity that transcended the physical pleasure, coursing through them both. "Mine," he whispered against her lips as they moved together. "Tell me you're mine." "Yours," Bree gasped as pleasure built within her. "Always yours." Their release came simultaneously, cosmic in its intensity, leaving them clinging to each other in the gently rocking water, foreheads pressed together as they caught their breath. Later, wrapped in soft robes on the deck of the main house, they watched stars wheel overhead from a hammock built for two. Matt's fingers traced idle patterns on Bree's back as she lay against his chest. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice rumbling beneath her ear. Bree tilted her face up to his. "What is it?" Matt's expression grew serious. "I've never brought anyone here because this place represents freedom to me. The one place I don't have to be the person my father tried to make me." "And who is that person?" His arms tightened around her. "Cold, calculating, seeing people as assets or liabilities." Matt's voice grew softer. "The man who saw your photo and orchestrated meeting you, that was him. The man I was trained to be. Bree absorbed this in silence, understanding dawning slowly. And the man who brought me here? The man I want to be, Matt replied simply. The man I think I can be with you. She raised herself up to look at him directly. I don't want you to change for me, Matt. Not for you, he corrected. Because of you. Because you make me believe I'm more than my father's son. His hand came up to cup her cheek. You make me want to be worthy of your love. The vulnerability in his confession moved her deeply. You already are, she whispered, leaning down to kiss him softly. They spent the next 5 days in a private paradise of their own making, swimming in secret coves, hiking to hidden waterfalls, making love in every corner of the house and beyond. Away from the pressures of his empire and her studies, they discovered each other anew, building a foundation deeper than passion, stronger than obligation. On their final evening, Matt arranged a surprise, a small boat that took them far from shore as the sun began to set. As darkness fell, he produced a paper lantern. It's a tradition here, he explained, lighting the small fuel cell within. You make a wish, then set it free. Together they held the lantern until it filled with hot air, tugging gently upward. What should we wish for? Bree asked. Matt's eyes met hers in the soft glow. A future, he said simply. Together. As they released the lantern, watching it drift skyward to join the emerging stars, Bree felt a profound shift within herself, the final walls around her heart dissolving completely. What had begun as captivity had transformed into the most authentic freedom she'd ever known. The freedom to love without reservation, to be loved without condition. That night, as they made love for the last time on the island, there was a new quality to their union, a sense of permanence, of commitment that transcended their original arrangement. And as Bree cried out Matt's name, her body arching against his, she knew with absolute certainty that no matter how their story had begun, she was exactly where she was meant to be. What she couldn't know was that back in the city, forces were already in motion that would test that certainty to its very limits, and that the greatest threat to their newfound happiness was waiting in the shadows, ready to expose the final, devastating secret Matt still kept. Chapter 7. Whispered Truths. Returning to reality after their island paradise felt like waking from a dream. The city's pace and pressure reasserted themselves immediately. Matt pulled back into endless meetings and conference calls. Bree focused on final exams for her semester. Yet something fundamental had shifted between them. Matt made time for her regardless of his schedule, often working from home just to be in her presence. Their nights were spent in passionate communion that went beyond physical desire. Each touch and affirmation of feelings finally acknowledged. 3 weeks after their return, Bree sat in their penthouse living room, staring at her phone in disbelief. "Everything okay?" Matt asked, looking up from his laptop where he'd been reviewing contracts. "I got it," she whispered, still processing. "The Morrison Fellowship for my doctoral program. Full funding, research stipend, everything." She looked up at him with narrowed eyes. "Did you have anything to do with this?" Matt closed his laptop, moving to sit beside her on the couch. "I may have made a donation to the psychology department," he admitted, "but the fellowship is awarded solely on merit. That was all you. Instead of the annoyance she might once have." Felt at his intervention, Bree found herself touched by his support. "Thank you for believing in me." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. "Always." He hesitated, an unusual look of uncertainty crossing his features. "Actually, I was thinking the fellowship covers housing, doesn't it?" Bree nodded, confused by the question. "So, technically," Matt continued, voice casual but eyes intense, "you don't need our arrangement anymore. Your mother's treatments are complete. Your education is funded." Her heart constricted painfully. "Are you ending our agreement?" Matt's expression softened as he lifted her hand to his lips. Just the opposite. I'm asking if you'd stay anyway, not because you have to, but because you want to. The significance of the request wasn't lost on Bree. Matt was offering her freedom, real freedom, and asking her to choose him. Yes, she said simply. I'll stay. The relief that flooded his features was almost comical. Matt pulled her into, his arms burying his face in her hair. I was terrified you'd leave, he confessed. Bree pulled back to look at him. After everything we've shared, after what I told you on the island. Love doesn't always conquer all, Matt said quietly, especially not when the beginning was as unconventional as ours. Bree cupped his face in her hands. Our beginning doesn't define our future. That night, they celebrated both her fellowship and their new understanding with a private dinner at home. After, sated with good food and better wine, they settled on the balcony overlooking the glittering city. I'm proud of you, Matt said, his voice warm in the darkness. The work you're planning, helping children from disadvantaged backgrounds, it matters. Bree curled closer against his side. It's personal for me. After my father died, if it hadn't been for a school counselor who believed in me, she trailed off, memories surfacing. She changed my life. Like you're going to change others. Matt murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by distant city sounds and their synchronized breathing. After several minutes, Matt spoke again, his voice holding an edge of hesitation. Do you ever think about them? Children, I mean. The question caught Bree off guard. Sometimes, she admitted, in the abstract. Why? Matt's hand continued its gentle stroking of her arm. Just curious about how you see your future. Something in his tone made Bree sit up to look at him directly. Matt Burton, are you asking me if I want children someday? A flush crept up his neck, the powerful CEO suddenly looking boyishly uncertain. Maybe. Yes, Bree studied him curiously. Do you? I never thought I did, he admitted. My own childhood was, well, you know. I didn't think I'd risk passing. That damage forward. His eyes met hers, vulnerability naked in their depths. But with you, I've started to imagine different possibilities. The admission created a warm glow in Bree's chest. I think you'd be a wonderful father. Matt's laugh held no humor. Based on what example? Based on who you are with me, she said simply. Protective but not controlling, supportive without suffocating. You've learned from your father's mistakes. He pulled her closer, his kiss holding a desperation that surprised her. When they broke apart, Matt rested his forehead against hers. How do you do that? Do what? See the best in me, even knowing the worst. Before she could respond, his phone rang with the distinctive tone he used for urgent business matters. Matt sighed, reluctantly pulling away. I need to take this. It's the Tokyo deal. As he moved inside to answer the call, Bree remained on the balcony, Matt's question about children replaying in her mind. It was the first time either of them had spoken about a future that extended beyond their immediate circumstances. A future that might include marriage, family, a lifetime commitment. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. How had she gone from being essentially sold to this man to contemplating having his children? Matt returned 20 minutes later, apology written across his features. They need me in Tokyo, he said, sinking down beside her. The acquisition is stalling. When do you leave? Bree asked, already anticipating the answer. Tomorrow morning. Matt's hand found hers. Come with me. Bree shook her head regretfully. I can't. My methodology presentation is Friday. It's a major part of my grade. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded in understanding. 3 days, he promised. I'll be back Sunday at the latest. Later that night, as they lay tangled in sheets damp from lovemaking, Matt's hands traced reverent patterns. Across Bree's skin. "I'll miss this," he murmured, pressing kisses along her collarbone. "Miss you." "It's only 3 days," Bree reminded him, though she already felt the hollow ache of his pending absence. Matt's eyes searched hers in the dim light. "I've become addicted to you," he confessed. "To this. To us." The raw honesty in his voice moved her deeply. "Me too." His hand slid to cup her face. "When I get back, there's something I want to discuss. Something important." Curiosity piqued. Bree raised an eyebrow. "You can't tell me now?" Matt smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face into something boyishly charming. Some things shouldn't be rushed. They made love again in the early hours of the morning, slower this time, each touch savoring, memorizing. As dawn broke, casting golden light across their bed, Matt held her close, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I love you," he whispered, into her hair, "more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," Bree replied, the words now coming easily, naturally. Hours later, she stood at the private airstrip, watching Matt's jet disappear into the clouds. 3 days. She could certainly survive 3 days without him. Yet as she returned to the penthouse, now echoing with emptiness, Bree was struck by how completely Matt had become integrated into her life, how the space they shared felt hollow, without his presence. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations for her presentation. By evening, exhausted from hours of rehearsal, Bree curled up on their bed with her laptop, smiling when Matt's face appeared on the screen for their scheduled video call. "You look tired," she observed, noting the shadows beneath his eyes. Matt ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "Negotiations are challenging, but I'm making progress." His eyes softened as they took in her appearance. One of his T-shirts, curls wild around her face. "You're wearing my clothes," Bree smiled, a little embarrassed. "They smell like you." Something heated flashed in his eyes. "God, I miss you." "Just one more day," she reminded him. "Too long." Matt's voice dropped lower. "What are you wearing under?" "My shirt?" Bree laughed, the sound carefree and genuine. "Is this turning into that kind of call, Mr. Burton?" His answering smile was pure wickedness. "That depends entirely on you, Miss Lindsay." What followed was the most erotic experience of Bree's life. Words and glimpses and sounds exchanged across thousands of miles, culminating in shared release that somehow made their connection feel even more profound despite the physical distance. Afterward, faces flushed and breathing returned to normal. They talked of ordinary things, her presentation, his meetings, a documentary they'd both been wanting to watch. "I should let you sleep," Bree said eventually, noting the time difference. "Wait," Matt said, his expression suddenly serious. "There's something I need to tell you." The change in his tone made Bree sit up straighter. "What is it?" Matt hesitated, an internal struggle visible on his face. He stopped, then started again. "I just want you to know that whatever happens, whatever you might hear, what we have is real. The most real thing in my life." Confusion furrowed Bree's brow. "Matt, you're scaring me. What's going on?" He shook his head, regret flashing across his features. "Nothing. Forget I said anything. I'm just tired and missing you." His smile returned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll see you Sunday. I love you." "I love you too," Bree replied, still unsettled by the strange moment. After the call ended, she stared at the dark screen, a vague disquiet settling over her. Matt had been about to tell her something important, but had decided against it at the last moment. What could be so significant that he'd start to confess, then retreat? Her unease was interrupted by the chime of the elevator arriving at the penthouse. Bree froze. No one had access except Matt and security, and Matt was Halfway across the world, slipping from the bed, she grabbed her phone, ready to call for help. "Bree?" A familiar voice called from the entryway. "You here, sis?" Relief washed over her as she recognized her stepbrother's voice. Moving to the bedroom door, she called out, "Derek, how did you get up here?" Derek appeared in the hallway, looking more polished than the last time she'd seen him, though the nervous energy that always surrounded him remained. "Security knows me," he said with a shrug. "I told them I needed to see you. Important family matter." Wariness replaced Bree's initial relief. Her relationship with Derek had been strained since the arrangement with Matt began. "What's going on? Is Mom okay?" "Mom's fine," Derek assured her quickly. "Better than fine with all those fancy treatments your billionaire boyfriend paid for." The bitterness in his tone wasn't lost on Bree. "Then why are you here?" Derek glanced around the opulent space with poorly disguised envy. "Nice setup you've got. Seems like selling yourself worked out pretty well." Anger flashed through Bree. "You sold me, Derek. I just made the best of an impossible situation." He had the grace to look slightly ashamed. "Yeah, well, that's sort of why I'm here." "Explain." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Burton reached out to me, said he wanted to make things right financially." "For what happened?" Confusion furrowed Bree's brow. "When was this?" "Few days ago." Derek wouldn't meet her eyes. "There's something you should know, Bree, about how he found you." A cold weight settled in her stomach. "He told me. He saw my photo in a university publication." Derek's laugh was harsh. "Is that what he said? That's not how it happened." "What are you talking about?" Her stepbrother's expression held a mixture of guilt and vindictive satisfaction. "He knew exactly who you were before I ever mentioned you. In fact, he's the one who approached me, not the other way around." The room seemed to tilt around Bree. "That's not possible." "It's more than possible. It's what happened." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "I was in deep with some guys, bad people. Suddenly Burton's people contact me, say he wants to meet. I figure maybe I can get a loan, buy some time. Instead, he shows me this whole file he has on you. Pictures, background, everything. Says he wants to meet you, is willing to handle my debts in exchange." Bree sank onto the edge of the bed, mind racing. "A file? What do you mean, a file?" "Like I said, photos, history, everything about you. Like he'd been watching you for months." Derek at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I knew it was messed up, but I was desperate. Why are you telling me this now?" Bree demanded, anger and confusion warring within her. Derek hesitated. "Burton contacted me yesterday. Paid off the last of my debts, plus extra, a lot extra. Said it was compensation for my role in facilitating his meeting with you." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a folded document. "He also sent this. Said I should give it to you if anything happened to him." Bree took the envelope with trembling fingers. "What is this?" "No idea. But the timing felt weird, like he was tying up loose ends." Derek backed toward the door. "Look, I know I screwed up. Massively. But whatever game Burton's playing, you deserve to know." After Derek left, Bree sat motionless, the unopened envelope burning in her hands. The secure foundation she thought she'd built with Matt was crumbling beneath her. All his confessions about seeing her photo, becoming intensely drawn to her, they were true but incomplete. He'd orchestrated everything, down to using her stepbrother's desperation as a tool. Her mind spun with conflicting emotions, betrayal at the manipulation, anger at being kept in the dark, but also an undeniable ache at the thought of losing. What they'd built together, the memory of his tenderness during her storm phobia, the vulnerability he'd shown at his mountain house, the raw connection they'd formed on the island. Were those moments real, or carefully calculated parts of his plan? With shaking hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document, a trust established in her name, funded with a staggering sum, along with a handwritten note. Bree, if you're reading this, circumstances have forced a revelation I had. Hope to make myself in my own way. Yes, I found you before your stepbrother ever approached me. Yes, I orchestrated our meeting. The official story was cleaner, less frightening perhaps, but not the full truth. The truth is, I saw you 6 months before we met. You were volunteering at a children's hospital, the same hospital where I was making a donation. You sat with a little boy reading to him when his own parents couldn't be bothered to visit. Your kindness, your genuine care for a child's society had discarded. It reached something in me I thought had died years ago. I had you investigated. An inexcusable invasion of your privacy. I learned everything about you. And yes, when I discovered your stepbrother's troubles, I used them to create a scenario where you would come to me. I've spent my life taking what I want without apology. But somewhere along the way, what I wanted changed. It wasn't possession anymore, but connection, not control, but partnership. This trust is yours, regardless of what you decide, as is my heart, for whatever that's worth now. Always yours. Matt Bree read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. The manipulation went deeper than she'd imagined, yet the confession held a raw honesty that couldn't be denied. 6 months of watching her before engineering their meeting. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself remembering the man who had held her during a storm, who had shared his private island and his deepest vulnerabilities, who looked at her with awe even now, months into their relationship. Pulling out her phone, she dialed Matt's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried his assistant, who informed her that Mr. Burton was in closed negotiations and unreachable until tomorrow. Restless energy propelled Bree from the bed. She paced the penthouse, mind racing with questions that only Matt could answer. Why the trust? Why now? What had he been about to tell her during their video call? As dawn broke over the city, Bree made a decision. She would hear Matt out when he returned. Their beginning might have been built on manipulation, but what had grown between them felt too real, too profound to discard without a full reckoning. What? She couldn't know, as she finally fell into exhausted sleep, was that Matt's plane had already left Tokyo, and that the final, most devastating revelation was still to come. Chapter 8. Shadow of Deceit. Bree's presentation went brilliantly, despite her distracted state. Her professors praised her research methodology, and several graduate students approached her afterward to discuss collaboration opportunities. Any other day, she would have been elated. Today, her mind remained fixed on Matt's imminent return and the conversation they needed to have. She arrived home to find the penthouse filled with her favorite lilies and a text from Matt. Landing in 2 hours. Car waiting for you at 7. Important dinner. I love you. The simple declaration, I love you, now carried new weight. Had he accelerated his return after Derek's visit? Did he somehow know what had been revealed? At precisely 7, Bree stepped into the elevator wearing the emerald dress Matt had once told her brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. The car waited as promised, whisking her not to a restaurant as expected, but to the helipad atop Burton Tower, where Matt's private helicopter stood ready. He waited beside it, devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit, his face lighting with genuine joy when he saw her. For a moment, Bree forgot all the questions swirling in her mind, caught in the simple reality of his presence after days apart. You're breathtaking, Matt said as she approached, pulling her into an embrace that conveyed longing, relief, and something like desperation. Where are we going? Bree asked when they separated, trying to steady her racing heart. Matt's smile held an uncharacteristic nervousness. Somewhere special, a place I should have taken you long before now. The helicopter ride lasted 30 minutes, landing on a sprawling estate outside the city. Twilight cast the manicured grounds in soft purple light as Matt led her toward a stately mansion. "Welcome to where I grew up," he said quietly. Bree looked at him in surprise. "Your family home? I thought you hated this place." "I did. I do." Matt's fingers tightened around hers. "But it's part of me, part of my story, and I want you to know all of me." Inside, the house echoed with elegant emptiness, beautiful but sterile, like a museum rather than a home. Matt guided her through rooms filled with priceless art and antiques, finally stopping in what must have been his childhood bedroom. Unlike the rest of the house, this room had been preserved in time. Trophies, academic awards, and, surprisingly, an extensive collection of astronomy books. "I wanted to be an astronomer," Matt said, following her gaze to the telescope still, positioned at the window. "My father called it a hobby for dreamers, not doers." Bree's heart ached for the boy whose dreams had been dismissed. "Why are we here, Matt?" He took a deep breath. "Because I want you to understand where I came from, why I became the man who would do what I did to bring you into my life." So they had come to it, the conversation she both dreaded and needed. "Derek came to see me," Bree said quietly. Pain flashed across Matt's features. "I know. Security informed me. He told me everything about how you approached him, not the other way around. About the file you had on me." Bree met his gaze steadily. "I read your letter." Matt's face paled, but he nodded. "I knew this moment would come eventually. I just hoped—" He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. "I hoped I'd have proven myself worthy of forgiveness first." 6 months, Bree said, the words barely audible. "You watched me for 6 months before arranging our meeting." "Yes." No excuses, no justifications, just raw honesty in that single word. Bree wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the room's comfortable temperature. "Why? Why me? What did you see that day at the hospital?" Matt moved to the window, staring out at the darkening grounds. "I saw someone real in a world full of facades. Everyone in my life wanted something from me. My money, my influence, my name. Then there you were, giving your time to a child who could offer nothing in return." He turned to face her, vulnerability naked in his eyes. "I saw someone who might see me, the real me, not just what I could provide. So you manipulated circumstances to bring me into your life," Bree said, struggling to reconcile the calculating orchestration with the genuine emotion in his voice. "Yes," Matt admitted. "I told myself it was just an introduction, that once we met you would have choices, but that was a lie I told myself to justify what I wanted." His voice broke slightly. "The truth is, I was obsessed. I had to know you, had to have you in my life, whatever it took." The raw confession hung between them. Bree approached slowly, stopping just before him. "Why tell me now? Why the trust? The letter?" Matt's expression held resignation mixed with determination. "Because I love you too much to keep lying. Because I want a real future with you. Marriage, children, growing old together, and that can't be built on half-truths." "Marriage?" Bree repeated, caught off guard. Matt reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. Bree's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. "I had planned to propose tonight," he said quietly. "A romantic dinner, music, the whole cliché. But now I realize you deserve the truth more than a perfect moment." He held out the box, but didn't kneel. "I love you, Bree Lindsay. I started loving you from afar, then grew to love you up close, with all your strength and fire and compassion. I want a life with you, an honest one this time." Bree stared at the ring, emotions warring within her. "This isn't a proper proposal," she said finally. Matt's face fell. "I understand. After what you've learned—" "No," Bree interrupted. "I mean you're supposed to kneel." Hope flared in his eyes as he slowly sank to one knee, still holding the ring box. "Bree Lindsay, will you—" The sharp ring of his phone cut through the moment. Matt ignored it, continuing, "Will you marry me? Not because of our arrangement, not because of how we began, but because of who we've become together." His phone rang again, insistently. "Ignore it," he said, eyes never leaving hers. "It might be important," Bree said, the moment already fractured. With Josie stuck, obvious reluctance, Matt checked the screen. His expression changed instantly. "I have to take this. It's my security chief." He answered with a curt, "Burton." As he listened, his face drained of color. "When?" he demanded. "Are you certain?" Another pause. "Lock down everything. I'm on my way." "What's wrong?" Bree asked as he ended the call. Matt's expression had transformed into something she'd never seen before, cold rage mixed with genuine fear. "Someone hacked our systems, accessed private files." His eyes met hers, filled with dread. "Including the real reason I sought you out." Confusion furrowed Bree's brow. "I don't understand. You just told me why." "I told you part of it," Matt said, his voice hollow. "The emotional truth. But there's something else, something I wasn't ready to tell you yet." Cold foreboding washed over Bree. "What aren't you telling me?" Matt's hand scrubbed over his face, a gesture of rare helplessness. "It's complicated. We need to get back to the city. I need to contain this. No more evasions." Bree interrupted, anger beginning to simmer beneath her fear. "Tell me now, all of it." Resigned, Matt motioned for her to sit on the edge of his childhood bed. He remained standing as if needing the distance. "The day I saw you at the children's hospital," he began, voice carefully controlled. "I wasn't there by chance. I was there because my investigator had traced you there." Bree stared at him, uncomprehending. "You were already looking for me?" "That's impossible. We'd never met." "We hadn't," Matt agreed. "But I was looking for someone connected to you." He took a deep breath. "Your biological father." Bree felt the world shift beneath her. Memories of the man she'd called father, who had died in that storm when she was 8, suddenly taking on a new dimension. The world seemed to tilt beneath Bree. "My father died when I was 8, she said automatically. "The man who raised you died when you were 8, Matt corrected gently. "Your biological father is very much alive." "That's not possible," Bree whispered, though even as she said it, fragments of memories surfaced, overheard. Arguments between her parents, her mother's evasiveness about certain topics, the lack of photographs from before her birth. "Your mother's first husband, your biological father, is James Lindsay," Matt continued, voice steady despite the bomb he was dropping. "He left when you were an infant, signing away his parental rights to the man your mother married soon after. The man you knew as your father." "How do you know this?" Bree demanded, mind reeling. Matt's expression tightened. "Because James Lindsay is my father's former business partner. The man my father destroyed out of spite, driving him to alcoholism and financial ruin." Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. "You sought me out because of who my biological father is? As some kind of... what? Revenge against your father?" "Initially, yes," Matt admitted, the confession clearly causing him pain. "I discovered your existence while investigating my father's past business dealings, exactly 6 months before we met. I thought bringing you into my life, making you part of my world, would be the ultimate revenge when he found out. The calculation of it, the cold use of her as a pawn in a family vendetta, made Bree physically ill. So everything, from the very beginning, was a lie." "No." Matt took a step toward her, stopping when she recoiled. "My original motivation was wrong, inexcusable. But what grew between us is real, Bree. More real than anything in my life." "You expect me to believe that?" she asked, voice shaking with anger and hurt. "When our entire relationship was founded on manipulation and deceit?" "I understand your Anger, Matt said quietly. You have every right to it, but I need you to understand something. His eyes held hers, intense with conviction. Yes, I sought you out for the wrong reasons. Yes, I manipulated circumstances to bring you into my life. But from the moment I actually met you, from that first day in my penthouse when you threw champagne in my face, nothing went according to plan. Despite herself, Bree found a flicker of painful memory surfacing. Matt's genuine surprise at her defiance, his growing vulnerability as their relationship deepened. What changed? She asked, needing to understand. You, Matt said simply. You weren't what I expected. You weren't a meek victim I could use for my purposes. You were magnificent, challenging, real. His voice dropped. You made me question everything, who I was, what I wanted, the man I'd become. By the time we went to the mountain house, my original plan was long forgotten. I was already... You're right, Matt acknowledged. I was a coward. I kept telling myself I'd explain everything after we were more solid, after you couldn't doubt that my feelings were genuine. He gestured toward the ring box, now closed on the bedside table. I had planned to tell you everything after you accepted my proposal. Another manipulation, I realize now. Bree felt tears welling, but refused to let them fall. Do you even know where he is? My biological father? Matt nodded slowly. He's in a rehabilitation facility upstate. I've been paying for his treatment for the past 4 months. This new revelation hit Bree like a physical blow. You've been in contact with him? All this time? Not directly, Matt clarified. But, yes, I've been ensuring he gets the best care. He's been sober for 3 months now. Why would you do that? Bree whispered, genuinely confused. Matt's expression softened. Because he's your father. Because helping him was the first step toward making amends for how this all began. Because I hoped... He hesitated. I hoped someday you might want to meet him, and I wanted him to be whole when you did. The consideration in this act, so at odds with the manipulation that had brought them together, left Bree speechless. She stared at the man before her, trying to reconcile the calculating mastermind who had orchestrated their meeting with the vulnerable, loving man who had shared his deepest self with her. I don't know what's real anymore, she said finally. Voice breaking, Matt took a cautious step toward her. This is real, he said, gesturing between them. What we've built, what we feel for each other. The rest, the beginning that was wrong, unforgivable perhaps, but everything since has been the most genuine thing in my life. Bree shook her head, backing toward the door. I need time, space, to think. Anguish flashed across Matt's face, but he nodded. Of course, whatever you need. I'll be staying with my mother for a while, Bree said, voice steadier than she felt. Don't try to contact me. I'll reach out if I'm ready to talk. The trust is still yours, Matt said quietly. No strings, no expectations. And Bree? His voice cracked slightly. I truly am sorry, not for loving you, never for that, but for how it began. Without responding, Bree turned and left, each step away from him physically painful, despite her anger and confusion. The helicopter pilot took her directly to her mother's modest home in the suburbs, asking no questions about her tear-stained face or the absence of the man who had arranged the flight. As dawn broke over her childhood bedroom, Bree stared at the ceiling, mind replaying every moment with Matt through this new, distorted lens. How much had been genuine? How much calculated? And how could she possibly separate the manipulation from the love that had undeniably grown between them? Meanwhile, across the city, Matt Burton stood in his penthouse staring at the engagement ring that would never adorn Bree's finger. The dossier hack had been contained, the files secured, but the damage was done. The woman he loved now knew the ugly truth of how their story began, and he had no idea if she would ever allow him the chance to write a different ending. What neither of them realized was that the hack had been no random cyber attack. Someone had deliberately targeted those specific files. Someone who had been waiting for the perfect moment to destroy the happiness Matt Burton had found. And that someone was just getting started. Chapter 9. Hearts in Flames. 3 weeks passed, without a word between them. Bree threw herself into research for her fellowship, spending long hours in the university library to avoid the quiet sympathy in her mother's eyes. She ignored the deliveries that arrived daily, flowers, letters, even her favorite books from the penthouse, all sent without pressure, just silent reminders of Matt's continued presence in her life. The emotional whiplash of the revelations had left her reeling. Matt had watched her for 6 months before orchestrating their meeting, all because of a biological father she hadn't known existed. Yet during those same 6 months, he'd seen something in her that transcended his original, vengeful motivations. The contradiction haunted her daily. Her mother finally broke the unspoken embargo on his name one evening as they washed dishes together. "Are you ever going to tell me what happened with Matt?" she asked gently. Bree's hands stilled in the soapy water. "It's complicated." "Love usually is," her mother replied, drying a plate with careful attention, "especially when it's real." "How do I know it's real?" Bree asked, voicing the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Our entire relationship was built on lies." Her mother set down the towel, turning to face her daughter fully. "Bree, I've watched you these past months. I saw how you changed with him, happier, more confident. That wasn't fake. He sought me out because of who my biological father is." Bree said, the words still bitter on her tongue. The plate her mother was holding clattered to the counter. "What did you say?" Bree looked up, startled by the reaction. "You heard me? My biological father, James Lindsay." The color drained from her mother's face as she sank into a kitchen chair. "He told you about James?" "You knew?" Bree whispered, a new betrayal unfurling. "All this time you knew I had another father and never told me?" "I thought it was better that way," her mother said, voice small. "After James left, Robert adopted you legally. He loved you as his own. When he died in the accident..." She trailed off, eyes distant with old pain. "You'd already lost one father. I couldn't bear to tell you that the father you mourned wasn't your biological one." Bree sat heavily in the opposite chair, mind reeling. "Why did James leave?" Her mother's smile held no joy. "Alcohol, gambling. He was brilliant but troubled, a risk-taker who lost more than he won." She reached across the table, taking Bree's hand. "But he loved you, Bree. Even as he signed away his rights, he cried, said it was the only good thing he could do for you. Step aside so someone better could be your father." The revelation hit Bree like a physical blow. All this time, she'd had another father, a living, breathing man who had made the painful choice to remove himself from her life. "Matt knows where he is," she said quietly. "Has been paying for his rehabilitation." Surprise flickered across her mother's features. "That's unexpected. He said he wanted my father to be whole if I ever wanted to meet him." "And do you?" her mother asked carefully. "Want to meet him?" Bree stared out the window, considering the question that had circled her mind for days. "I don't know. Maybe." She turned back to her mother. "Why didn't Matt just tell me from the beginning? Once we started to care for each other, why keep lying?" Her mother's expression softened. "Fear, probably. Fear of losing you." She squeezed Bree's hand. "We do terrible things when we're afraid, especially when we're afraid of losing someone we love. He manipulated my entire life." "Yes," her mother agreed, "and that was wrong, unquestionably wrong, but Bree..." She hesitated. "In all the time you've been apart, has your anger made you stop loving him?" The question struck at the heart of Bree's confusion. Despite everything, the manipulation, the lies, the calculated beginning of their relationship, she couldn't deny the ache in her chest, the constant awareness of his absence. "No," she admitted quietly, "it hasn't." "Then maybe that's your answer." Later that night, unable to sleep, Bree opened her laptop and faced the question that had been haunting her. A quick search brought up news articles about Burton Enterprises, including recent photos of Matt at business functions. He looked thinner, more haggard, the controlled CEO mask firmly in place but strain evident in his eyes. On impulse, she typed James Lindsay Burton Enterprises into the search bar. The results were illuminating. Articles from 15 years earlier about a promising partnership dissolved in acrimony, about James Lindsay's spectacular fall from grace after Edward Burton systematically destroyed his reputation. The more she read, the more she understood Matt's original motivation. His father had ruined her biological father out of nothing but vindictive spite. Matt, raised in that toxic environment, had seen Bree as a chess piece in his own revenge against his father, and yet he had changed. The man who sought her out for revenge had become the man who loved her enough to risk losing her by revealing the truth. Closing her laptop, Bree made a decision. Tomorrow, she would visit the rehabilitation facility. It was time to meet her biological father, to understand the past that had shaped her present in ways she'd never imagined. The facility was beautiful, more luxury spa than hospital, clearly reflecting Matt's financial involvement. As she was escorted to a sunny garden courtyard, Bree's heart pounded painfully against her ribs. The man sitting on the bench looked up as she approached. A man with her same eyes, her same hands, her same way of tilting his head in curiosity. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by wonder and fear. "Bree?" he asked, voice breaking on the single syllable. She nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. James Lindsay stood slowly, as if afraid a sudden movement might make her disappear. "You look so much like your mother," he said, tears filling his eyes. "But that stubborn chin, that's all me." They talked for hours, awkward at first, then with growing ease as James shared stories of her infancy, of his struggles with addiction, of his regret at missing her life. He spoke of Matt with unexpected warmth. "He came to see me, you know," James said. "About 6 months ago. I thought he was there to finish what his father started, destroy what little I had left. Instead, he offered me a second chance. Said he was doing it for you, though you didn't know I existed yet. He was using me as revenge against his father," Bree said, the anger still there but somehow muted now. James sighed. "At first, maybe, but people change, Bree. God knows I have." He studied her face. "He loves you. That much was clear from how he spoke about you." "How can you be so forgiving of his family after what his father did to you?" "Because holding on to hate nearly killed me," James said simply. "And because the son shouldn't be judged entirely by the sins of the father." He covered her hand with his. "Matt is not Edward Burton, just as you are not me, despite our shared blood." As Bree drove back to her mother's house that evening, her mind swirled with new perspectives. Meeting James had shifted something fundamental in her understanding of her past, of Matt, of the complex web of circumstances that had brought them together. During a severe thunderstorm that afternoon, she'd remained calm while talking with James. Perhaps the first time since childhood she hadn't been paralyzed by her phobia. Something was healing inside her. Her phone chimed with a text as she pulled into the driveway. Unknown number, but she knew instantly who it was from. "I hope you found what you needed today. I'll keep my distance as promised. Just know that I love you, in case you ever doubted it." Matt had known she would go see James, had respected her enough not to interfere, to let her discover her own truth. The man who had once orchestrated every aspect of their meeting was now giving her complete freedom to choose her own path. Before she could decide how or whether to respond, another text came through from her mother. "Come home quick. Your stepbrother's here. Something's wrong." Alarmed, Bree rushed inside to find Derek pacing the living room, face pale with panic. "Thank God you're here," he said when she entered. "They're after me. I didn't know where else to go." "Who's after you?" Bree demanded. "The guys I owed money to before Burton paid them off," Derek explained, hands shaking. "They're saying the payments were fraudulent, that they want their original debt plus interest. That's why I came to the penthouse with that envelope last time. I was already getting warnings, and Matt offered protection along with the trust document." "That's impossible," Bree said. "Matt would never—" "Not Burton," Derek interrupted. "His father, Edward Burton, apparently discovered what his son did, tracked down my creditors, and convinced them to come after me again. Said it was to teach his son a lesson about meddling in his affairs." Cold dread settled in Bree's stomach. "What does Matt's father have to do with any of this?" Derek looked confused. "You don't know? Edward Burton returned from Europe last month. He's been systematically undermining everything his son built while he was away. The company's in chaos. It's all over the business news." Bree grabbed her laptop, quickly searching for recent news about Burton Enterprises. The headlines confirmed Derek's claims. Edward Burton had returned after years abroad and was using his controlling interest in the company to dismantle his son's achievements. Several articles mentioned rumors of Matt's engagement to the daughter of his father's former rival, speculating that this personal rebellion had triggered Edward's return. "I need to go," Bree said suddenly, grabbing her keys. "Go where?" her mother asked. "To Matt. This is all happening because of me, because he chose me over his father's approval." Derek caught her arm. "Bree, these guys mean business. They're looking for me, but they know about you too. It's not safe." "I'll be fine," she insisted, pulling away. "The penthouse has security." "Bree, please," her mother pleaded. "At least call him first." She tried, but Matt's phone went straight to voicemail. Same with his assistant's line. Fear propelled her into her car, driving faster than was safe toward the city lights. Arriving at Burton Tower, Bree was startled to find the usual security absent from the lobby. The private elevator to the penthouse required a code she realized she didn't have, having always been with Matt or announced by security. As she stood considering her options, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "He's not there." Bree turned to find Camilla Winters, Matt's ex from the gala, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Where is he?" Bree demanded. "Drowning his sorrows at the Morrison Hotel bar last I saw." Camilla's perfect features arranged themselves into false concern. "He's not taking his father's return well, or your departure." Without bothering to respond, Bree rushed back to her car and headed for the downtown hotel. The elegant bar was crowded with after-work patrons, but Matt wasn't among them. The bartender, recognizing her from previous visits with Matt, informed her that Mr. Burton had indeed been there earlier, but had left about an hour ago. "He wasn't in good shape," the man added with professional discretion. "I called him a car." A pang of worry shot through Bree. Despite everything, the manipulation, the lies, the thought of Matt in pain still affected her deeply. The same man who had once orchestrated their entire meeting now seemed to be losing control of his own carefully constructed world. Frustration and fear mounting, Bree returned to her car, only to find two men in expensive suits waiting beside. "It Ms. Lindsay?" the taller one asked. "Your brother owes some associates of ours a significant sum." Bree's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "My stepbrother's debts are not my concern. They became your concern when you benefited from the fraudulent payments," the man replied, stepping closer. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." "I don't think so," Bree said, backing away, calculating the distance to the hotel entrance. "The lady isn't going anywhere with you." The voice, Matt's voice, came from behind her. Bree turned to find him approaching, his usual polished appearance somewhat disheveled, but his eyes clear and focused. "This doesn't concern you, Burton," the second man said. "Your father made that clear." "My father doesn't dictate my actions," Matt replied, positioning himself between Bree and the men. "And Ms. Lindsay is under my protection, regardless of our current personal situation." "You're making a mistake," the first man warned. Matt's smile held no warmth. "No. Approaching the woman I love was your mistake." He pulled out his phone. "The police are on their way. I suggest you leave while you can still pretend this conversation never happened." Something in his tone, absolute certainty backed by power, made the men reconsider. With muttered threats, they retreated to a waiting car. Once they were gone, Matt turned to Bree, relief and wariness warring in his expression. "Are you all right?" "I've been looking everywhere for you," she said, suddenly aware of how much she'd missed him, his voice, his presence, the feeling of safety he provided. "I heard you visited James today," Matt said quietly. "I hope that meant you might be ready to talk." "Your father is back," Bree said, the immediate threat overriding the personal conversation they needed to have. Matt nodded grimly. "Yes, apparently my relationship with you was the final straw in a long list of rebellions. He's determined to bring me back in line or destroy everything I've built. Derek says your father arranged for his creditors to come after him again. I suspected as much." Matt ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she recognized well. "My father is nothing if not thorough in his vendettas." "This is all because of me," Bree said, guilt washing over her. "Because you chose me." "No," Matt said firmly, reaching for her hand, then stopping himself. "This is because I finally stood up to him. You were just the catalyst for something that's been brewing for years." A sudden commotion behind them, raised voices, running feet, made them both turn. One of Matt's security team was rushing toward them, face grim. "Sir, there's a situation at the penthouse, a fire. The sprinkler system was disabled. First responders are on scene, but..." Matt was already moving toward his car, Bree automatically following. "Was anyone inside?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. But your father was seen entering the building shortly before the alarm was triggered." The drive to Burton Tower was tense, silent, except for updates coming through the security officer's radio. By the time they arrived, smoke was pouring from the upper floors, fire engines surrounding the building. Matt approached the fire chief, his usual commanding presence seeming to part the crowd of onlookers automatically. "My father may be inside," he said without preamble. The chief's expression was grave. "We have reports of someone still on the penthouse level. Teams are making their way up, but the elevators are disabled, and the fire is concentrated on the upper floors." Before anyone could stop him, Matt was striding toward the building entrance. Bree caught his arm. "What are you doing?" "I know another way up," he said, eyes on the smoke billowing from his home. "A service elevator in the east wing. It has a separate power supply." "You can't go in there." Matt's eyes met hers, determination warring with something softer. "He's my father, Bree, despite everything." "Then I'm coming with you," she said, grip tightening on his arm. "Absolutely not." "You don't get to decide for me anymore," Bree said, fiercely. "That's not how this works." For a moment, Matt looked like he might argue. Then, with a curt nod, he led her around to a side entrance, using his security credentials to access areas cordoned off from the public. The service elevator was functional, but stopped 3 floors below the penthouse due to heat sensors. From there, they took the emergency stairs, encountering thickening smoke as they climbed. "Stay low," Matt instructed, pulling his shirt over his mouth and giving Bree his suit jacket to do the same. The penthouse was almost unrecognizable, smoke obscuring the once pristine space, flames visible from the main living area. Matt moved with purpose toward his office, Bree following close behind. They found Edward Burton collapsed near the balcony doors, apparently having tried to reach fresh air before being overcome by smoke. Matt knelt beside his father, checking for a pulse. "He's alive," he confirmed, voice tight. "Help me get him up." Together, they managed to lift the older man, one arm over each of their shoulders. Progress was slow, the heat intensifying as the fire spread from the living room toward the hallway they needed to use. "We're not going to make it that way," Matt shouted over the roar of the flames, directing them toward his bedroom instead. Inside, he sealed the door behind them, buying precious minutes. Moving to a seemingly solid wall, Matt pressed a hidden panel, revealing a concealed elevator, a private escape route. "My father's paranoia finally proves useful," he said with grim humor as they maneuvered Edward into the small space. The descent seemed to take forever, oxygen growing scarce in the confined space. When the doors finally opened to the underground garage, emergency personnel rushed forward to take Edward from them. Paramedics converged, oxygen masks extended, questions fired rapidly about injuries and exposure. In the chaos, Bree found her hand still gripped tightly in Matt's, neither willing to let go despite everything between them. As they were guided toward a waiting ambulance, reporters swarmed the perimeter, cameras flashing. "Mr. Burton, is it true your father started the fire? Ms. Lindsay, are you and Mr. Burton reconciling?" The questions faded as the ambulance doors closed behind them, leaving them in relative quiet, oxygen masks covering their soot-stained faces. Across from them, Edward Burton lay unconscious, monitoring equipment beeping steadily. Matt removed his mask briefly. "You shouldn't have come in there with me. You shouldn't have gone in at all," Bree countered, pulling her own mask down. "But you did, because despite everything you still care about him. Just like despite everything I still care about you." Something like hope flickered in Matt's eyes. "Bree, not now," she interrupted gently, replacing her mask and nodding toward the paramedic, watching them closely. "Later, when we're both thinking clearly." Matt nodded, understanding in his gaze as he replaced his own mask. But his hand found hers again, fingers intertwining, a silent promise that later would come. What neither of them could know as the ambulance sped through city streets was that later would bring both reconciliation and a final reckoning, and that the fire that had nearly claimed their lives had also burned away the last barriers between them. Chapter 10. Love's Redemption. Rain pours down as Bree stands at her graduation ceremony, diploma in hand. 3 months since the fire. 3 months of rebuilding, not just Matt's penthouse, but themselves, their relationship, their truth. For the first time in her life, the storm doesn't frighten her. Instead, it feels like renewal. She spots him in the crowd, no longer the controlling billionaire who once purchased her presence, but the man who risked everything to save his father, despite years of emotional abuse. The man who walked away from his empire rather than continue the cycle of manipulation and control. The man who gave her space to decide her own future. Their eyes meet across the distance. Matt doesn't approach, still respecting her boundaries, her need for independence. But his gaze speaks volumes, asking the question he's been patient enough not to voice. Bree makes her decision. Later they meet at her favorite cafe. The awkwardness of their reunion melts away as they talk for hours. About James Lindsay's sobriety celebration last week, about Matt's new medical technology foundation, about second chances and whether people who begin broken can still build something whole. "I was wrong," Matt says, their hands almost touching on the table. "Not just about how we began, but about thinking I could possess you. Real love isn't ownership, it's freedom. And I was wrong to think our beginning had to define our ending." Bree replies, finally bridging the distance between their fingers. "We're more than how we started." When they step outside, the rain has stopped. Matt doesn't press for answers about their future, doesn't make demands or declarations. Instead, he simply asks, "Walk with me." The question means everything, An invitation, not an arrangement. A choice freely offered, not a transaction. Bree takes his hand. Yes. And as they walk together through the rain-washed streets, neither leading nor following, but moving in perfect synchronicity, Bree understands that love's true redemption isn't in forgetting the past, but in choosing to write a different future, one where she isn't owned or arranged or possessed, but cherished as an equal. This time, their story begins with a choice, her choice, and that makes all the difference.